I've worked at Riverside Mortuary for 3 years now. Most people think my job is creepy, but honestly, it's just a job. The dead don't scare me. They can't hurt you. At least, that's what I used to believe. But after what happened last Tuesday night, I'm not so sure anymore. Some things that happen in that basement, they stay with you. And some of the dead, well, they're not as quiet as they should be. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm a mortuary assistant. I work the night shift, which means I'm usually alone in the building from 10 p.m. until 6 in the morning. The pay is good, and the work is straightforward. I prepare bodies for viewing, assist with embalming, and make sure everything is ready for the funeral directors in the morning. It's peaceful work, believe it or not. No demanding customers, no office drama, just me and the silence. Riverside Mortuary is an old building, built back in 1952. It's got that vintage charm with the original tile floors and high ceilings. The basement is where I spend most of my time. That's where the preparation room is, along with the cold storage units. The fluorescent lights down there flicker sometimes, and the pipes knock when the heat kicks on. But I got used to all that a long time ago. You learn to ignore the little noises. You have to, or you'll drive yourself crazy. Last Tuesday started like any other shift. I clocked in at 10, grabbed my coffee from the break room, and headed down to the basement. We had 2 bodies scheduled for preparation that night. The first was an elderly woman named Margaret Chen, 87 years old, natural causes. The second was a middle-aged man, John Doe. He'd been found in his apartment 3 days after he died. No identification, no family that anyone could find. Those cases always made me sad. I started with Mrs. Chen. She had a peaceful face, the kind that made you think she'd lived a good life. I worked carefully, methodically, washing, setting features, preparing her for the embalming process. I always talked to them while I worked. I know it sounds weird, but it made the work feel more human. Less like I was working on an object and more like I was caring for a person. "You've got a beautiful service plan, Mrs. Chen," I said softly as I worked. "Your daughter picked out a lovely dress for you, light blue, with little flowers. She said it was your favorite." I'd read the family notes before starting. It helped me connect with who they were. Mrs. Chen had been a teacher for 40 years, 3 children, 7 grandchildren. She died in her sleep, surrounded by family photos. I finished with Mrs. Chen around midnight and wheeled her into the cold storage. That's when I noticed something odd. The temperature gauge on Unit 7 was acting strange. It kept flickering between 38 degrees and 72 degrees. That shouldn't happen. Those units are supposed to stay at a constant 38 degrees. I made a note to tell the day supervisor about it in the morning. I went back to the preparation room to start on John Doe. His file was thin. Male, approximately 45 years old. Cause of death listed as cardiac arrest. No distinguishing marks except for a small scar on his left forearm. When they brought him in, he'd been wearing jeans and a gray hoodie. His personal effects, what little there were, sat in a plastic bag on the counter. A wallet with no ID, $17 in cash, and a weird brass key that didn't match any standard lock I'd ever seen. I pulled back the sheet and got my first good look at him. He had dark hair, starting to gray at the temples. His face was ordinary, the kind you'd pass on the street and never remember. But there was something about his expression that bothered me. Most bodies, they look relaxed, peaceful. This guy looked tense, even in death. His jaw was clenched, and his eyes, even though they were closed, seemed to be squeezed shut, like he died afraid. I shook off the feeling and got to work. But as I started the initial washing, I noticed his skin was cold. I mean, really cold. Colder than it should be, even accounting for the time he'd spent in storage. It was like touching ice. I pulled my hand back instinctively, then felt stupid. Of course he was cold. He was dead. But still, something felt wrong. That's when I heard it. A sound from the cold storage area. A soft thump, like something had fallen over. I froze, listening. The mortuary was supposed to be empty except for me. I waited, but heard nothing else. Probably just the building settling. Old buildings do that. I went back to work, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in my stomach. I was about halfway through the preparation when the lights flickered. Not just a quick flicker, but a long, slow dimming, like something was draining the power. They dropped to almost nothing, leaving me in near darkness with just the emergency exit sign glowing red in the corner. Then they came back up, bright as ever. My heart was pounding. I stood there, hands still gloved and wet, staring at the lights. Get it together, Sarah, I told myself. It's just old wiring. But my hands were shaking as I continued working. I kept glancing at John Doe's face, half expecting his eyes to pop open. That's the thing about working with the dead. Your imagination can run wild if you let it. I'd seen every zombie movie, every horror film. I knew they were just stories. But alone in a basement with a corpse at 2 in the morning, those stories felt a little too real. I heard it again. Another thump from the cold storage. This time, it was louder, more deliberate. I set down my tools and walked slowly toward the storage area. The hallway leading to it was dimly lit, and my footsteps echoed on the tile floor. I reached the door and peered through the small window. Inside, I could see the rows of storage units, their stainless steel doors gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Everything looked normal. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The cold hit me immediately. It was always cold in here, but tonight it felt arctic. My breath came out in visible puffs. I walked down the row, checking each unit. They were all closed, all secure. I was about to leave when I noticed Unit 7 again, the one with the faulty temperature gauge. The door was slightly ajar, just an inch, but enough to notice. I knew I'd closed it properly after putting Mrs. Chen away. I always double-checked. Always. My hand reached for the handle, and I pulled the door open fully. The metal drawer slid out smoothly on its tracks. Mrs. Chen lay exactly as I'd left her, peaceful and still. Nothing was wrong, but the temperature gauge was still flickering wildly, and the air coming from the unit felt warm. Too warm. I closed the door firmly, making sure it latched. Then I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming from the preparation room. The room where I'd left John Doe. I stood completely still, my ears straining. The footsteps stopped, then started again. Scrape, step, scrape, step, like someone was dragging one foot. I wanted to run. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to get out of that basement, out of the building, and never come back. But I forced myself to move toward the preparation room. Maybe someone had come in, and I hadn't heard them. Maybe it was the funeral director, or security doing rounds. It had to be something normal. It had to be. I reached the doorway and looked inside. The room was empty. John Doe still lay on the preparation table, exactly where I'd left him. His body hadn't moved. The sheet was still positioned the same way, but something was different. His eyes were open, wide open, staring straight at the ceiling. I felt my stomach drop. I knew I hadn't opened his eyes. I was certain. I always saved that for last. After the features were set, I approached the table slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. His eyes were a pale gray, clouded with death. They didn't move, didn't track me as I got closer. Of course they didn't. Dead eyes don't move. I reached out with a trembling hand and gently closed them, pressing the lids down. They should have stayed closed. But the moment I lifted my hand, they slid back open. Slowly, unnaturally, like something was pushing them from behind. I stumbled backward, knocking into the instrument tray. Scalpels and forceps clattered to the floor. This wasn't possible. This wasn't happening. I grabbed my phone from my pocket, ready to call someone, anyone. But there was no signal down here. There never was. The basement walls were too thick. I'd have to go upstairs to get a signal. I backed toward the door, keeping my eyes on John Doe. That's when I saw his hand move. Just a twitch at first, his fingers curling slightly. Then his whole hand clenched into a fist. I watched in horror as his other hand did the same. This wasn't muscle spasms. This wasn't gas or nerves. This was deliberate. His head turned slowly toward me, those gray eyes locking onto mine. I ran. I didn't care about protocol or professionalism. I bolted for the stairs, taking them two at a time. Behind me, I could hear that scraping sound again. Scrape, step, scrape, step. He was following me. I burst through the stairwell door into the main floor hallway. The lights up here were warm and bright, normal. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I dialed 911, but as soon as it started ringing, the call dropped. I tried again. Same thing. I looked at my phone screen. Full signal, but the calls wouldn't go through. That's when I heard the basement door open behind me. Slow, creaking hinges. I spun around. Nothing. The hallway was empty, but I could feel something. A presence. Cold air drifted up from the stairwell, carrying with it a smell, decay and something else. Something chemical and wrong. I knew I couldn't stay there. I headed for the front entrance, but my feet felt like they were moving through mud. Every step was an effort. The hallway seemed to stretch out before me, getting longer instead of shorter. The lights started to flicker again, and I heard that scraping sound echoing through the building. It was everywhere now, surrounding me. I couldn't tell which direction it was coming from. I finally reached the front door and grabbed the handle. Locked. But it shouldn't be locked from the inside. There was a panic bar, designed to open from the inside in case of emergency. I slammed my body against it. Nothing. The door didn't budge. I hit it again and again, panic rising in my throat. I was trapped. A voice spoke behind me, low and raspy, like gravel grinding together. You shouldn't have touched me. I turned slowly. John Doe stood at the end of the hallway. His body was wrong. His movements were jerky and unnatural, like a puppet with tangled strings. The skin on his face was gray and loose, and those eyes, those terrible gray eyes, were fixed on me. I'm not John Doe, he said, taking a lurching step toward me. I'm something much older, something that's been waiting in the dark for a very long time. You invited me in when you touched my body. You gave me a door to open. He took another step. His jaw hung slightly open, and I could see that his tongue was black. I've been jumping from body to body for decades. Morgues, hospitals, funeral homes, anywhere the dead are kept. I slip in, wear them for a while, then move on when someone new arrives. I pressed myself against the door, searching desperately for another way out. The windows were all sealed, locked from the outside. The thing wearing John Doe's body kept advancing. You take such good care of them, it said mockingly. Talking to them, treating them with respect. But you never asked if anyone was listening. You never wondered if something might answer back. My mind raced. There had to be a way to stop this. This thing, whatever it was using the body. The body was just a vessel. If I could damage the body enough, maybe it would be forced out. I ran for the hallway that led to the maintenance closet. I knew there were tools in there, something I could use. The thing followed, that horrible scraping sound echoing with each step. I yanked open the maintenance closet and grabbed the first thing I saw. A fire axe, mounted on the wall for emergencies. This definitely qualified. I turned to face the creature as it rounded the corner. It stopped when it saw the axe, and for the first time, something like uncertainty crossed its face. "You won't do it," it said. "You care for the dead. You respect them. You won't desecrate a body. You're not a body," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You're a parasite." I raised the axe. The thing lunged at me, faster than it should have been able to move. I swung the axe with everything I had. It connected with the thing's shoulder, and black liquid sprayed out. Not blood. Something thicker, like oil. The creature screamed, a sound that didn't come from human vocal cords. It was high-pitched and wrong, like metal scraping metal. The body collapsed, twitching on the ground. The black liquid pooled around it, and I watched in horror as something started to emerge from the wound. It looked like smoke at first, but darker, more solid. It twisted and writhed in the air, trying to take form. Then it rushed toward me. I felt it hit me like a wave of ice water. Cold seeped into my bones, into my mind. It was trying to get inside me, to wear me like it had worn John Doe. I fought it. I don't know how, but I pushed back against the invasion. I thought about everybody I'd ever cared for, every person I'd helped prepare for their final rest. I thought about the dignity I tried to give them, the respect, that warmth, that humanity. It pushed back against the cold darkness. The thing shrieked again and retreated, pulling away from me. It swirled in the air, furious and desperate. Then it did something I didn't expect. It fled. The dark smoke rushed back down the hallway, toward the basement stairs. I followed, still clutching the axe. I had to make sure it was gone. I had to finish this. I descended the stairs carefully, listening. The basement was quiet now. Too quiet. I made my way to the preparation room. John Doe's body was gone from the table. I found it in the cold storage area, crumpled on the floor in front of Unit 7. The door was wide open, and Mrs. Chen's drawer was pulled out, but her body was undisturbed. The thing hadn't tried to take her. Maybe it needed a fresher host. Maybe it was weakened. I pulled the drawer back in and closed the unit door. Then I dragged John Doe's body back to the preparation table. I finished the preparation as the sun started to rise. I worked in silence. No talking this time. I kept waiting for the body to move again, for those eyes to open. But it stayed still, completely, finally still. When I was done, I called my supervisor and told him I was taking a few sick days. He didn't argue. I probably sounded as shaken as I felt. I never told anyone what really happened that night. Who would believe me? I'd sound crazy. But I made some changes after that. I don't work alone anymore. I arranged my schedule so I overlap with the evening assistant for a few hours. And I don't talk to the bodies anymore. I still treat them with respect, but in silence. Because now I know that sometimes, in the quiet spaces between life and death, something might be listening. It's been 3 months since that night. I still work at Riverside Mortuary, though I've thought about quitting 100 times. But something keeps me there. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's a sense of duty. Or maybe I'm just watching, waiting to see if it comes back. Because here's the thing that keeps me up at night. That thing said it had been jumping from body to body for decades. Morgues, hospitals, funeral homes. How many are there? How many of these entities are out there, wearing the dead like suits, waiting for someone to give them an opportunity? Last week, we received a new body, Jane Doe, found in an alley downtown. No ID, no family. When I pulled back the sheet, I felt that same cold, that unnatural chill that goes deeper than refrigeration. And when I looked at her face, I saw it. That same tense expression, that look of someone who died afraid. Her eyes were closed, but I had the horrible feeling that if I touched her, if I started the preparation, those eyes would open, and something old and hungry would look back at me. I stood there for a long time, just staring at her. Then I covered her back up and walked away. I called the funeral director and told him I couldn't handle this one. He was confused, but he didn't push. Someone else prepped her. Someone who doesn't know what to look for. Someone who doesn't know that some of the dead aren't as empty as they seem. And that terrifies me more than anything, because now I know the truth. The mortuary isn't just where we prepare the dead for their final rest. Sometimes it's where things that should stay buried find their way back into the world. And I'm the only one who knows to watch for them. The question is, how long before I miss one? How long before something slips past me and walks out of this building wearing human skin? I don't have an answer. All I know is that every night when I clock in, I'm not just preparing bodies. I'm standing guard. And I pray I'm strong enough to keep standing.